Hello all, welcome back. Today we start with our Social Studies first chapter Rise of British Rule in India. Since the ancient period, India has enjoyed an incomparable position, means very unique, very different position in the whole world because of its economic, cultural and religious inheritance. Inheritance means anything that is carried forward from previous generation. For example, the texture of your skin and the quality of your hair, or maybe your looks, your habits, you have got it from your parents. It means you have inherited from pre generation. Now, due to this economic richness of India and cultural inheritance, people from different countries of the world they came to India. They got attracted to India. There was a lot of demand for Indian spices, that is cloves, pepper, jeera, etc. Muslin, that is very soft and very delicate, or you can say, and it is also very costly cloth. Then there is silk cloth, indigo, etc. in the European countries. Now, trade between India and Europe was carried out through which two ways? That is land route and sea route. And at the center of these routes was Constantinople, that is Istanbul in Turkey. Now, it so happened that after the conquest of Constantinople, that is after these Turkish Muslims had captured Constantinople in 1453, the sea route through Constantinople was closed for the European countries. And these European countries who could not do without Indian spices and muslin and etc. now had to find out a new sea route. And so it is said that as the Europeans could not do without the spices, they felt compelled, that is, they were forced to discover a new sea route. So now a period began, or you can say an era began of geographical discoveries. So let's see what is this geographical discovery period that began. Discovery of sea route to India. Very interesting. Now, with the motivation or a boost up, or you can say inspiration, encouragement, and money support, that is economic help from the Portuguese king, Prince Henry, some brave people started their journey to discover a new sea route. Now, many great men tried to discover sea route to India. For example, Bartholomew Dias, who discovered the Cape of Good Hope. That you will see later on. What was that? In short, Bartholomew Dias reached at a particular southern tip of a country, but then he didn't move ahead. But he said that there is a hope to discover a new sea route, and that tip was given the name Cape of Good Hope. That is, there is good hope that we will discover the sea route. Now, with the economic, that is money support, economic assistance from the Spain king, now who moved out to find a new sea route? That is Christopher Columbus. He began his adventurous journey of discovering a new sea route, which again came to a stop at an island. Today, this island is known as West Indies, located in Atlantic Ocean. Now, Columbus, who had believed throughout his life, that is, till the last day of his life, he believed that he had discovered a new sea route to India, had actually discovered a new land, but not India. And since this clarification was made by a man called Amerigo Vespucci, this new land was given the name America. Now, the Portuguese sailor Vasco da Gama discovered the sea route to India in 1498 AD. And when he reached Calicut, that is on the western coast of our country, he was welcomed by the then King Zemarin. The then king means that time King Zemarin, and he was given the permission by him to carry out trading, that is business. Thus, this is considered a very, very important event in the world as it opened the doors for the other European countries to come to India and do trading. Meanings as it is given on each slide. So wherever you have any problem related to words, the meanings are there ready for you. Next. Now here you can see the map. There's a map of the small part of that India is shown over there, and then there is Africa. Now Africa tip you see is written over there, Cape of Good Hope. As I told you, the southernmost tip of Africa, till there he reached, but then he didn't move ahead, and there he gave the name a Cape of Good Hope. It means there is hope from this route if you move ahead, and you can discover a new sea route to India. Now on the other hand, there's the next slide. As we move ahead, it says about the arrival of Europeans to India. That is one after the other as the various European nations came to India to trade with India. So let's see about this various small events that took place here. The Portuguese were the first to arrive in India for business. After the discovery of the sea route to India, this is what we saw on the previous slide. Now within a time period, that is a span of 100 years, the Portuguese took control of many regions, that is areas, territories like Diu, Daman, Goa, Cochin, Malacca, etc. Now inspired by the Portuguese success in trade, the Dutch, the Danish, they also came to India for trade. That is, suppose that you see somebody's success in your class, and if you also intend to be that successful, naturally you will start following the hard work that that person is doing. Similarly, having seen that the Portuguese were becoming successful, the other countries also started the same route and the same way to do trading with India and get success. The English traders established East India Company. Now why do we call European countries as Western countries? Because on the world map if you see, the European countries are on India's left, that is west side. So we call it Western nation. Whereas India on the world map, when you see, it is located on the right hand side of European countries. So they gave the name Eastern Company. Now as it was India, they gave the name East India Company. So the English traders established the East India Company to carry out business with India. It so happened that in 1600, when Queen Elizabeth of England gave the permission to her East India Company to carry out trade with eastern countries, the first ship came to Surat, and that was under the leadership of Captain William Hawkins. Now, but due to the dominance, that is the control and opposition from the Portuguese who were already in India before other countries came, Britishers were not allowed to establish their trade center in Surat. But finally, East India Company got the permission from Mughal Emperor Jahangir, and thus the British East India Company established its first trade center, we call it Koti also, in Surat in 1613. So when was the first time that they were not given the permission was? In 1600, though the ship arrived, but they didn't carry out the trade due to the opposition from Portuguese. But once again, British sent their ship to Surat, and they were then successful in 1613 to establish their center. Initially, that is in the beginning, the company established its trade centers in Surat, Bharuch and Ahmedabad. Now let's see a map over here. It shows over here three different colors in the small rectangular box on the right hand side. Now pink star And now see on the India map, pink star. They were the places where the Portuguese ruled. They had their trade centers, they had their companies over there. You can call it colony. They had their coatis. Now next is blue color also is shown, and in between there is a triangle of violet color. So each one, this color relates to different countries' colony. So Portuguese colony, French and British colony. So these were the places initially that were captured on the left hand side, that is on our west coast it is said, and the right hand side is called as east coast. So first time western coast, most of the ports were taken hold of or controlled by these three nations. Now as we move ahead, you will see that due to the strong presence of Marathas on western side, that is in this region, the company understood that yes, there is danger of Marathas who was considered as very strong with a strong army and all. So they moved first towards south, then east, where they set up their centers in Machilipatnam, that is Andhra Pradesh today, St. George, Chennai, Fort William, Kolkata. Mumbai became later on their headquarters, that is in 1687. The French East India Company also came to India to do trading in 1668. So up till now, who all were successful in trading with India? Portuguese, then Britishers, then there were the French who started trading with India. And French also finally set up their trade centers at Mahe, Karaikal, Puducherry. Before it was known as Pondicherry. Then they also had their trade centers at Chandranagar, Machilipatnam. Now in 18th century, that is between 1700 to 1799. In the 18th century, the English and French were continuously, that is constantly busy establishing their rule all over the world and conquering more and more territories. So they wanted to become, you can say, the ruler of the world by establishing their trade centers all over the world and become rich. Now between 1746 and 1763, this is termed as 18th century as I told you before, there were three Mysore wars between French and British East India Company in India, with the French East India Company lost, thus making very easy for the British East India Company to settle in India and expand their rule and trading. Thus, at the end of this battle for power, Portuguese were left with very small regions, that is Diu Daman Goa. French also were left with few trading centers, that is Chandranagar, Mahe, Karaikal and Puducherry. Meanwhile, Dutch was not successful in this strong fight between French, Portuguese and Britishers, so it left India forever. The next part, Battle of Plassey, your short note. Siraj-ud-Daulah, he was ruling over Bengal, and this particular short note will be easier for you as we had done in 8th standard too. So Siraj-ud-Daulah was ruling over Bengal due to his impulsive nature. Impulsive means to act but without thinking, very much speedier in his action but without thinking whether it will be advantageous or not. So Siraj-ud-Daulah was a man with impulsive nature, and because of this he had many enemies, that is some opponents in his own state where he was ruling. Now during this period, the British East India Company built a fortress. Now fortress, that is a huge wall, protective wall you can say, sometimes surrounding the whole town. So he built a fortress around the trade center in Kolkata, on pretext of security reason without taking Nawab's permission. Now, once again, fortress, you understood, it's a huge wall encircling sometime a town. Here it was around the trade center. Now, this trade center was in Calcutta, where the fortress was built. But this fortress was built by the British East India Company on pretext. On pretext means under the reason that we need this fort for security. And again, he didn't even take the permission from Nawab. Now, pretext also you can say in easy way and very clarity form that pretext means a reason which we sometimes give to justify our any action, but actually that is not the real action and that's not the real mean. So for you, you can otherwise just take simple word under the reason. And without taking the permission, as I told you, of Nawab, he did this act. But Nawab Sirajuddaulah destroyed the fortress. Now, when this news reached Chennai, a small army of Britishers, whose leader was Robert Clive, reached Bengal in order to help the Calcutta Trade Center. In spite of this army of East India Company being strong, they understood very clearly that it was not going to be easy for them to defeat Nawab's army. Now what to do? Some wrong action will have to be taken by the British East India Company if they wanted to rule here. So Robert Clive resorted to, means adopted to treachery, that is cheating, betraying someone. And he created a plan that is called a conspiracy was planned. And it so happened that he wanted to carry out this conspiracy to defeat Nawab, in which the Nawab's commander-in-chief Mir Zafar and Seth Ami Chand were coaxed to join. They were attracted and forced to join. So who are the two people who were coaxed to join? That is Mir Zafar and Seth Ami Chand. And Mir Zafar was Nawab's commander-in-chief. Now, on the pretext, that is under the reason that Nawab is unnecessarily torturing the people, a war was declared at a ground near the village named Plassey. So, the name of the village was Plassey. And because a war was at a ground near this village, the war was famous as the War of Plassey. Now next, the Battle of Plassey was fought on 23rd June 1757, and the battlefield of Plassey is located 38 kilometers from Murshidabad, West Bengal. Now, according to this plan to cheat the ruler, Mir Zafar lost the battle. Sirajuddaulah was defeated because it was already planned that the commander-in-chief will remain inactive, and as such the ruler will be defeated, and it happened. Due to Robert Clive's cheating or treachery, the Battle of Plassey ended in just half a day, and the company as a result got a freehold. Freehold means no time limit of ownership, that is unlimited time period to own 24 regions, that is Parganas. Parganas actually, before in ancient time, they considered it as a group of villages, or it was a subdivision of a district in India. So now after this Battle of Plassey, company got the control for unlimited time period of how many Parganas? That is 24. And Mir Zafar was made the ruler or Nawab of Bengal. Thus, the foundation, that is the base of company's rule in India was laid down with the Battle of Plassey in 1757. Now, Battle of Buxar. This too is your short note. The Britishers made Mir Zafar the Nawab of Bengal, as you saw, and under different reason tried to extract plenty of wealth from Mir Zafar. By any means they wanted to get money from Mir Zafar by showing or by telling or giving him many useless reasons. Now, due to their greed to control or to have more and more powers, East India Company managed to dethrone Mir Zafar and made Mir Qasim the Nawab of Bengal. Now, it was such a game that the Britishers were playing that in place of Sirajuddaula, who was made the king? Mir Zafar. Now, when Mir Zafar was not ready to provide all that wealth and all to the Britishers, he was dethroned and Mir Qasim was made the Nawab of Bengal. But it so happened that Mir Qasim proved to be more ambitious than Mir Zafar. So the East India Company was once again brought under a threat. That is, Mir Qasim proved to be a threat to the company. Hence, Mir Qasim was removed and Mir Zafar was once again brought on the seat as a Nawab. Mir Qasim took protection or shelter, that is refuge, with the Nawab of Audh, or here we call it Awadh. Awadh is in UP. Before independence, it was known as United Province of Agra and Audh. Now, during this time, the Mughal Emperor Shah Alam also had been in Awadh. So, all three of them, they declared to join hands and fight against the British East India Company unitedly, and finally they declared a war. Now, what do you think? Who must have won the war? Naturally, the British East India Company. So, at Buxar, East India Company fought against the United Army on 22nd October 1764, in which the United Army lost. Thus, the company got the Diwani right. Diwani right means right to collect tax from Bengal, Bihar and Orissa. The next part is expansion of company rule. Now, this is how sometime by force, sometime by cheating, the Britishers kept on expanding their rule in our country. The English government passed a regulating act. Now, what is regulating act? It was an act of the Parliament of Great Britain, who had decided to control the management of East India Company's rule in India. So, this act was passed in 1773, according to which the Governor of Bengal was made the Governor General, and all the trade and political activities of the company were brought directly under his control. So, once again, according to the 1773 Act, the Governor of Bengal was made the Governor General and all the activities were brought under his direct control. So, he was the one who was given the right to take all the decision related to business and politics. The Mumbai Madras Governor and his group, that is council, were brought under him. Thus, Warren Hastings became the first Governor General of India, and during his time period of rule, that is tenure, the first Maratha War and second Mysore War was fought with Hyder Ali of Mysore, and the problems for the East India Company increased because it had to face both these powers at the same time, that is simultaneously. Now we continue with this, that Cornwallis took over as Governor General after Warren Hastings. You will have to remember who came after the other. as in order you will learn all the governor generals. So make a list of it. Cornwallis became governor general after Warren Hastings, and during Cornwallis' time period of rule, the third Mysore war took place with Tipu Sultan, famously known as Tiger of Mysore, and the company had to join hands with Marathas and the Nizam to defeat Tipu Sultan, because Tipu Sultan was so strong that only the Britishers could not fight against him and defeat him. So again, a very nicely, you can say, a plan was made by the British East India Company to join hands with Marathas and Nizam. And then this unitedly three parties would be able to defeat Tipu Sultan. Now Tipu could not win against these united forces, and thus he had to accept the treaty. That was an agreement made by the Britishers. Now the next is, after Cornwallis, who became the Governor General? That is Sir John Shore. Due to some rigid policies, rigid means not flexible, very stubborn policies, or the one that cannot be changed. So due to the rigid policies of Sir John Shore, East India Company's fame declined. That is, East India Company had to lose many things during his time period, and at that time Marathas became stronger. So Governor General Wellesley, who came after Sir John Shore, got the responsibility of making the company supreme in India, that is, to expand their rule in India. For this, Wellesley introduced subsidiary alliance system. Very interesting, but yes, at the same time you have to learn it as for your 3-marker. The condition of this system and the states adopted under this are as follows. So learn it. Now alliance means subsidiary alliance system. Alliance means a union or an association formed for mutual benefit. So it was just an agreement that was made, but actually it was for the benefit of Britishers. So what were the terms and conditions of subsidiary alliance system? First, the army trained by the East India Company government will be provided to the state that accepts the system. Now those kings or nawabs who agreed to sign this system or follow this system and sign the agreement, they had to keep and take care of the army of East India Company. Second, in return, that particular Nawab of the state who signs or accepts this system will provide for the army, means food and shelter and salary will be given by the Nawab to the British force. Or otherwise, the Nawab would have to give away the region which was equal to the income, and this is what they had to give to the Britishers. Now third, without the permission of the company, the state cannot wage a war, means cannot declare a war or fight a war, or could not even sign any agreement with other states. Fourth, there will be at least one English representative in the state assembly. Representative means the one who represents the Britishers. So one English man will be there always in the state assembly. Actually, it was like a jasoos. And the fifth point, other foreigners would not be employed by the Nawab. Means Nawab had to compulsorily pick up Britishers as their employee in the state under this system, but no other foreigners will be employed in that state of Nawab. Now the states, that is the rulers who accepted this system, were Nizam, Mysore, Awadh, Gaikwad, Scindia, Bhosle and Holkar. So this system was like sweet poison. Why sweet poison? You had done in 8th standard, if you remember. Slowly and slowly, that is, initially the Nawabs and all of India, of various states, they found it very attractive. But it was as the days rolled on, or as the time moved ahead, they came to know that this system was destroying them, and they would be left with nothing. By implementing this system, Wellesley captured and kept on annexing, means adding up, many regions of our country and expanded the rule of East India Company. So Wellesley was a general who was very much successful in expanding the rule of East India Company in our country. Now Governor General Wellesley asked Tipu Sultan to accept this system, but Tipu Sultan refused. And for not agreeing or for declining this alliance system, the company, with the support from Nizam, attacked Mysore in 1799. During this fourth Mysore war, Tipu lost his life while fighting against the Britishers. And after Wellesley, now once again, who came over here as a Governor General? So, here came now Hastings. And this is the reason I told you that just make a note order wise that who was the first and finally who came as a Governor General, so that it becomes easy for you to have a look at it. You need not turn the pages when you have your textbook in your hand. So after Wellesley, Hastings came to India as Governor General. He waged a war with Nepal and made the Gurkhas to join the army. Hastings fought a battle with Pindharas. Now Pindharas or Pindaris, as the word says, who were they? They were some irregular horsemen that robbed and hunted with the Maratha armies in central India. So Hastings fought a battle with them and controlled them also. And with the third Maratha war, the supremacy of company was established in our country. In comparison to the earlier Governor General, William Bentinck was termed or known as Liberal Governor General. Now liberal means the one who is not strict. Naturally, you have many teachers in your school or maybe at your tuitions, and sometimes you say some particular teacher is very strict, or maybe from your parents also, your mother may be strict, but the father is not strict, so your father is said to be liberal. So liberal means open to new ideas or ready to accept others' opinion. So William Bentinck became famous as Liberal Governor General. Now Bentinck believed that the dissatisfaction in Indian states was due to the imperialist policies adopted by the previous Governor General, which could not bring about any unity. So this is what was the thought of William Bentinck, that before him all those Governor General who came and ruled in India was so strict that, and again they also carried out imperialism, and thus they were not accepted by the Indians. So he was very liberal in his actions. Now what do you mean by imperialism? The definition of imperialism tells that it's a practice of a larger country or a big, rich and strong country or government growing stronger by taking over a poor or weaker countries that are rich in important resources. Or you can take it this way also, the meaning of imperialism, that when a large country and a strong country takes over the hold of a poor, or you can say a weak country, but yes, that weak country is rich in important resources, then that system is termed as imperialism. So imperialism was carried out by all the Governor General, but not by William Bentinck. He was a bit liberal, And then came Dalhousie. He came to India as a Governor General in 1848. He was a strong imperialist, and Dalhousie adopted the policy of annexation in order to expand the rule of company and also for the expansion of British imperialism in India. So today I stop at this particular point, and the second video you will see the other part of this chapter. Thank you so much.